There you go. Thank you, Michael, as always, kicking us off in the right direction. So, as Dean and Michael alluded to, we're going to be taking some deep dives today. And the first is going to be a panel from many of the leading investors in our space, focused specifically on esports. So I'd like to welcome to the stage our moderator, Martin Ray, as well as Jason Kay, Sonny Dillon, and Phil Sanderson. Welcome, Martin. Good morning. Great to see you. Always good to see you.
Hello. Okay, I'm going to be brief because you guys want to hear how to make a bunch of money, but I'm going to thank Michael backstage there for the dice plug. That's always good. But we kind of came on with the whole esports thing, and they didn't talk about sort of that being a huge chunk of the market, but it's approaching $1 billion. And I was a huge skeptic a few years ago, and I had a colleague, actually an assistant of mine, say, the thing is going to be enormous. It's going to drive a lot of design decisions, marketing decisions, player participation, fan participation, and I couldn't imagine this 5 years ago, people paying to play, traveling to watch, paying to watch, that sort of thing. And you guys probably know these numbers, but League of Legends, last League of Legends finals, I could put out Stanley Cup finals and you guys would say, absolutely, I'm sure League of Legends finals was bigger than that. But World Series finals, NBA finals, the Masters, it's the only thing bigger at this point is Super Bowl and World Cup. And approaching, like I said, $1 billion business and growing it not just double digits, but really 30% a year on the revenue side. All the major consumer brands are flocking around. And so there are some opportunities there, and you know, we've got some guys that look at stuff all the time, good and bad, and make decisions on where money's going to be spent. I want to have them introduce themselves: Jason Kay, Sonny Dillon, and Phil Sanderson. Phil, you want to start?
Sure, thanks. So my name is Phil Sanderson, and I'm a venture capitalist. Our office is here in the Presidio, and I focus on gaming. I've got about a dozen game investments. I've been in the venture business for almost 20 years and have seen a big progression of gaming since edutainment and CD-ROM games back in the mid-90s. I'm excited to talk about esports today.
Hi guys, I'm Sonny Dillon, co-founder and principal at Signia Venture Partners. We're an early stage fund based in Menlo Park in San Francisco. Games is an area that I focus on as well. We have about half a dozen gaming companies in the portfolio right now. I'm pretty excited about VR, AR, and esports right now within the game space, and excited to share some thoughts, particularly within esports today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Kay. I'm a relatively newly minted venture capitalist. This is a new engagement for me. I was formerly on the operating side of the games business at Activision, and then with Jason Rubin, worked on trying to revive THQ a few years ago, unfortunately not successfully. Been focused a lot on the esports business. For me, this is big conversation about why did it take so long. AID invests primarily in Asia. We've just started to branch out into the US. We are a Hong Kong-based private investment firm, and we focus primarily on technology, gaming, media, and are looking very closely at the esports opportunity, particularly on esports wagering. So I'm excited to be here today and talk to you a little bit about what we've learned and what we're looking at.
Okay, I'm going to start off with, I had a colleague make a comment that esports it's not a business, it's a marketing strategy. And when people are spending $1 billion, there's got to be a business there. But I'd ask you guys to kind of comment there, because you guys look for leverage. I mean, where's the leverage? How can you really grow a business, make some money? And if it's just a marketing strategy and it's a marketing spend, then where is the business? You had mentioned, maybe gaming, you know.
I think when you look at the wagering business, I think esports is likely to develop, in a way that's quite similar to the way that we look at professional sports today: football, baseball, basketball. Obviously, esports is highly asymmetrical. You've got a lot of aspirational people who want to be involved in esports but are not necessarily esports caliber players. You've got a relatively small number of elite athletes. It's not really that different from professional sports today. And if you look at where there's significant amounts of money being generated, in the professional sports business, traditional professional sports business, it's obviously team ownership. So I think the analog to that in the US is ownership of the underlying copyrights for people who own the League of Legends and the Counter-Strike Go's, and so Valve and of course the Riot guys, and there will be new entrants. But for the people who don't own the copyrights, I think there's a lot of money to be made facilitating wagering in legal jurisdictions. You've got specific rules in the US related to skill-based games versus games of chance, but in the rest of the world, look outside the US, it's a largely unregulated environment, both positively and negatively. Unregulated meaning you don't necessarily have the controls and the kind of financial security that you might have in something like the Las Vegas.
Does that become a platform play, or Sonny?
So I actually think that there's something else that we have to consider when it comes to regulation within the space. So we've just all been aware, I think last week, of the betting scandal between DraftKings and FanDuel. DraftKings is now taking bets for the League of Legends World Championship in Berlin. FanDuel's acquisition of Alpha Draft means that they're going to be playing in the space too. And then we've got Vulcan and Unicorn that are more specific to esports. I think that regulation is inevitable because whenever you do have a form of gambling, 2006 saw the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, and we're going to start seeing. I don't think self-regulation is going to be enough. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about how much can this grow, it will grow, but within a controlled set of barriers, I think, in this case. So when you're talking about, is it a means of engagement? Yeah, it is, and it's going to be people can continue to play competitively, but it's going to be within more controlled guidelines when there's betting that comes into play as well.
So where would you look for an investment in that area? Is that, and I come back to a platform, is that a systems investment, a platform investment?
I think there's multiple areas to invest in, all different types of categories. This especially, people love to play games. They love to watch games. I think there were 70 million people who watched games last year on Twitch. And they love to gamble. So you add those together and you're going to find investment opportunities. We've looked at a lot of different investment opportunities for companies who create platforms for esports games. I think those are somewhat limited. There's team ownership opportunities, there's advertising opportunities. We invested in Alpha Draft because we believed the model of betting on statistics and creating fantasy teams within gaming was a real category, and it is, and it's growing very quickly. Fortunately, FanDuel felt the same way and bought Alpha Draft, as you mentioned, Sonny, and DraftKings is there. I think FanDuel and DraftKings have really proven that, A, it's legal and people want to play these fantasy teams because they're already watching the games. I mean, we referenced, you don't just watch these games like you do NFL, but you can play them as well. So it's really fun to be able to be in, an environment like League of Legends and play, and then be able to gamble on your favorite players. I think that's the number one opportunity. There will be advertising opportunities. I don't think that as a venture capitalist we want to invest in sponsoring teams. That's more of like a movie model, and it's pretty risky. But you're right, we want leverage. We want operating leverage, predictability of a SaaS company, the growth potential of technology companies, and we find that in models like FanDuel, Alpha Draft, DraftKings, Unicorn, Vulcan, so forth.
And I think there's another opportunity that's very high risk and very high reward, and it'll be interesting to see if any VC is willing to take the risk or winds up being sort of a publisher subsidized risk. I don't think we've yet seen a game that was designed from the get-go to be an esports vehicle. I think we've got games that work well in that, Dota, League of Legends, which are kind of branches of the same tree. You've got Counter-Strike. You have a really relatively small number of games that people are playing in esports competitions, and I think there's an opportunity, although obviously very, very hard to execute, to build a game that you think will work specifically as an esports vehicle, even if it doesn't necessarily work well as a single-player vehicle, for instance.
Yes, certainly. I've got to believe game designers and all the ones I talk to, they think about that. Can you get a community involved? And can you do, Christian will be speaking here, Tiger Strawley, later, I think tomorrow or something, but certainly they think about that when they're working on their game and how that works. But isn't it just you find a really fun game, you get a huge community and they want to compete? So
I think it's a little bit more than that. You need, and there might be an events business around this because you've got a championship series and a season, but that's at a national, international level. There should be a local season which is put together around all games, and then move to a regional and national level, and you could create, like a college going to pro, semi-pro, pro, because ultimately people love to play these games, and the betting platforms need content. They need people to be able to bet, and they also need statistics from those publishers. You can't just you can't do it alone. You need the
So you're going to have to partner with those publishers.
ultimately, it can either be through an API or it may be an exclusive relationship, but you need the data. And also, you need more data than some of these games currently offer. So you need to work with the publishers and say, can we get more statistics on these individuals, on the players, or can you give us access to those stats so that we can create fantasy teams and play in a gambling setting? This is more for the gambling, opportunity.
I think Vainglory's been, Super Evil Megacorp's game, Vainglory's been a great example of esports being built into the game from the start. Like they've got the launch of Vainglory Seasons, which has just kicked off, further to what Phil was just saying, organizing tournaments locally, getting a lot of support from the company to engage the community, because community is really what's helped this game grow to where it is now. But I think manufacturing a game from the start with esports in mind is not necessarily as easy as it sounds. Getting access to certain things like replay data, understand when kills and AFKs and all the kind of stats that you want access to, not every game is able to provide that just yet. Riot does, and there's certain companies, stats companies out there that build on that are used by betting company, by people that are engaging in betting, et cetera. But I think you're right in that a lot of people are using esports right now as a marketing, tool to say, to boost engagement within the community, to just harbor more competitive gameplay.
So if you were switch seats and you're out here listening, and where we talk about sort of broader things that you guys would look at, you're looking for leverage and all the operating leverage, that kind of thing, to make some money longer term. What's underserved in this area? That if you were an entrepreneur, it might be longer term, not something today, but long term. What's underserved, or where do you think it's going, where someone can take advantage?
There's some advertising opportunities. The advertising is pretty poor, I believe, within the Twitch, YouTube ecosystems. I think there are content sharing opportunities. You reference replays, being able to edit replays very quickly, share them with your friends, add commentary to them, so forth. We try to come up with ideas as VCs and share them with entrepreneurs, but what I love about our business is that the entrepreneurial community comes up with the greatest ideas that we can find. Right. So it's a good question, but it's not our job.
There's still some opportunities for knowledge arbitrage. I mean, right now it's very segmented. I think there's still things that are working in certain territories and not working. There's no really sort of good cross-platform view of the esports business. You've got, as I said, really very, very small number of games that are working at scale, but there may be games that I'm not aware of that are working in a particular territory and are becoming popular. How do you find out about those opportunities? I mean, most great games in some ways are derivative of another game. Mm-hmm. Candy Crush was not the first person to do effectively a match 3, right? Bejeweled had done this before that. I'm sure there were many games who'd done that before that. It's so much about refinement and execution of a good idea. What is the opportunity to see where something is working in another territory or with another demographic, and then broaden that into maybe a broader audience?
Seeing certain games, so like you do have the staples that we've been talking about, Counter-Strike, Dota, League, etc., right, that we all know about. Rocket League is another game that just shot to the top. It's been around, the company's been around since 2004. They had another version of the game that was circling around for a while, and it's really fun. Would I have been able to call that it would have been one to take off? Mm-hmm. No, that's the nature of the business, right? Some of these games can continue to sneak up on you, and you wouldn't, I wasn't aware that it was rising in esports popularity at the time. I don't think that areas of opportunity, necessarily exist within new streaming platforms at this point. So I think we've got YouTube, Azubu, Hitbox, Twitch, that are already, there's a multitude of platforms there for PC. Mob Crush and Camcorder offering it on mobile now. I think areas to further engage your community at the amateur level. I think there's some interesting opportunities there. There's a company in London named Maestro. A company in London named Face It that I've been looking at for a little while. That does a great job of organizing, laddering, engaging community locally at like an amateur level. Because right now a lot of focus is on the pros. Despite how the majority of the audience is actually amateurs watching and wanting to play as well. And then there's other opportunities, I think, to further engage your audience in a similar way to that YouTube influencers were able to do on the early days of the MCNs. Similarly here, I think, whether that's e-commerce opportunities, highly targeted advertising opportunities, just a boosted form of engagement between fans and professional esports players, influencers. I think that's an opportunity that we're going to start exploring a little more too.
Okay.
I think there's one more that hasn't been mentioned, which is creator tools. Because I think you've got creators